This sweet treat was once only made during the holidays or for grand special occasions. It can be filled with your favorite fruit, cheese, or even savory foods. It is emigrated from Eastern Europe all the way to the south of Texas, where people come from far and wide just to make a pit stop. We're exploring the history and origins of Kolache. I'm your host, Glenn Warren, and welcome to another serving of Seasons Eatings, the podcast which explores the history and origins of your favorite Christmas foods. Seasons Eatings is available on Apple Podcasts, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you download your favorite podcast. So please take a moment and subscribe so we can have other listeners join us at the Christmas table. If you have a quick minute, please leave a review for the podcast. It lets me know how I'm doing, as well as helps others find the podcast. And if you let me know you've left a review, I'll send you a Seasons Eating sticker as a personal thank you. Seasons Eatings can also be found on all the socials. All these links can be found on our website, seasonseatingspodcast.com. And while you're at the site, if you're feeling extra generous this holiday, you can buy me an eggnog. Every donation goes towards the running of the podcast and is greatly appreciated. And finally, you can let me know how I'm doing, leave a suggestion for future episodes, or just say hello at seasonseatingspodcast@gmail.com. Walking into a kitchen in mid to late December might reveal the floors and countertops of those who celebrate with food covered in flour and melted chocolate with dozens of cookies cooling on the island. Cookie experimentation could result in anything from intricate cookie sandwiches to stained glass cookies made out of crushed candy. With all of those options, you might find your favorite in the humble Kolache. Like many other round-baked products around the world, it's supposed to symbolize the sun. Throughout Eastern Europe, with the introduction around the 15th century of yeast breads enriched with butter, eggs, and sugar, it started to designate a round, sweetened yeast bread consumed on special occasions. Czechia, Slovakia, Poland, Hungary, and Croatia all made their own versions of Kolache with various spellings. Bohemians and Moravians paired the pastry with povidla, a kind of plum butter. In the 18th century, bakers began making it with filling already added in a small dip in the center of the dough. Over time, new toppings and fillings emerged, such as poppy seeds and farmer's cheese. Many cakes and pastries which originate from the Czech lands are now found worldwide, especially where the Czechs emigrated. They took local recipes that they enjoyed in the villages and cities from which they came, and arguably the most famous is the Kolache. Kolaches are a traditional Czech dessert. Originally, they were usually baked on holidays such as Christmas or Easter, or on special occasions such as weddings. Wealthier families would bake them every Sunday. They are small, bite-sized treats, so it wouldn't be uncommon to make 100 or more for a celebration. The name originates from the Czech word kolo, meaning circle. In Czech, a single one is called a kolache, and more than one is called a kolaches, although in America you may hear them just called kolaches. And who in their right mind would just buy one anyway? While Czech kolaches vary by region, all of them are round in shape, some being larger with more filling than pastry, almost tart-like with slices cut out for serving, and some being smaller individual pastries. They're most commonly filled with apricots, cream cheese, poppy seeds, or plums. They can be open-faced or filled, and there are various techniques for piping and decorating the kolaches that differ regionally. They are often topped with a crumb made up of a mixture of flour, sugar, and butter. The Czechs are a Slavic people from Bohemia, Moravia, and parts of Silesia. The first immigrants to North America were chiefly poor laborers from around northeastern Bohemia. Czech immigration to Texas began as early as the 1820s, but most immigrants made the journey as individuals. Large-scale and family immigration began with the immigration of Reverend Josef Arnoš Bergman, described as the father of Czech immigration to Texas by some sources, and his family in 1850. Once settled in Texas, Bergman wrote letters to families in Europe encouraging them to move to Texas. On August 19, 1851, these immigrants headed by Josef Silar began a long circuitous journey that took them to Hamburg, Liverpool, New Orleans, and eventually Galveston. Dangerous and unhealthy traveling conditions reduced the group numbers by half. About 700 Czechs had established themselves in Texas by the time of the Civil War. By 1900, the number of foreign-born Czechs in the state had climbed to over 9,000, and by 1910 to over 15,000. Czech immigration was driven by the availability of land in Texas and events in Europe. In the 1840s, the Austrian Empire, which included Czech lands, was still run by a feudal system, despite the wave of democratic ideals permeating Western Europe. This led to the revolutions of 1848, which did little to improve economic status of peasants who still found it difficult to gain wealth. The revolutions, together with factors such as religious persecution and mandatory military service, fueled a wave of emigration from Austria beginning in 1852. Immigrants to America were unfamiliar with the concept of American democracy due to their lack of experience with democratic ideals. The concept of states' rights and slavery were equally foreign to the immigrants. By the 20th century, approximately 250 Czech communities had been settled in Texas, especially in backland prairie areas where farming looked promising. The greatest concentration was found in Lavaca and Fayette counties, though Czech settlement extended into Washington, Burleson, and Brazos counties. Pride among Czechs in Texas perhaps reached its height during World War I and immediately afterwards, for it was spurred by popular enthusiasm for the newly founded Free State of Czechoslovakia. Such groups as the Czech National Alliance, which identified with the Czech cause in Europe, found support among the Czechs in Texas. As measured by the widespread use of Czech in churches, fraternal organizations, journalism, and books, as well as the preservation of ethnic music and other folk arts, Czech ethnicity remained strong in the state until World War II. Beginning in the 1960s, as part of a national interest in ethnic awareness, Czech ethnic festivals and celebrations became increasingly popular, although the use of the language continued to decline. And of course, with these festivals and celebrations brings about food. The Kolache is a staple of the Czech culture. Most of Texas's Czech settlers and their beloved Kolache recipes originated in the Moravia region of Czechoslovakia, so it's safe to say that Moravia is the real birthplace of the fruit-filled Kolache that we all know and love. Mimi Montgomery Irwin owns and operates the Village Bakery in West Texas. In a town full of Czech immigrants, her father, Wendell Montgomery, opened the bakery in 1952 on a dare from a high school football coach and local priest, she says. People thought he was crazy. At the time, in our town of West, it would be like selling ice to Eskimos because everyone made them. But something interesting was happening in society, Irwin says. Kolaches, a staple among these Czech communities, appeared at church dinners, bazaars, and family gatherings, but were fairly unknown to outsiders. Irwin's father found a market in a traveling salesman as they stopped in for food or gas. The pastries soon become a favorite of passers-by. While traditional kolaches are fruit-filled, a Texan twist evolved when they were made with sausage, cheese, and jalapenos. Irwin, a self-proclaimed kolache purist, maintains that these are not true kolaches, but rather what her father called a koblasniki. We'll find out more about how the kolaches are being brought into the new century after the break.
What's up, dudes? I'm Jerry D of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, books, fashion, and fads.
If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, he's got it covered. Wait, is there a lot of things to talk about for the 80s and Christmas?
Well, you got the movie giants like Christmas Vacation, Scrooged, and A Christmas Story. There are TV specials like Muppet Family Christmas, Claymation Christmas Celebration, and a Garfield Christmas special.
Plus classics shown every year.
You also jam out to Last Christmas, Do They Know It's Christmas, and Christmas in Hollis. But most of all, it was a time for the most bodacious, best-selling Christmas toys ever, like He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers,
and Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yes, them too. We cover them all, plus much more, including standard segments like Hap Hap Happiest Memory, Gag Me with the Spoon, The Other Half of the Battle,
and Chant with the Littles.
So tune in to Totally Rad Christmas everywhere you get your podcasts. Turn the clock back and dive into those warm and fuzzy memories.
Later, dudes.
What's your favorite guilty pleasure? Is it watching cheesy Christmas romances, no matter what time of year it is? For Holly Cuomo and Scarlett Alexandra, this is it. These two host the Netflixmas podcast, where they talk about the best, the worst, and the cringiest Christmas romances from all your favorite streaming services. You can listen today on Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. And don't forget to check out their Patreon for bonus episodes. Have a very merry Netflixmas and a sappy new year.
Over time, kolaches became more commercialized in Texas, often paired with donut shops and made with donut dough. Filling them with meat is a misunderstanding that Irwin says she tries to correct. I try to help them understand that when they ask for a kolache, they should not be getting meat. In many of the chains, that's what's being passed off as a kolache, Irwin says. And for Czech communities outside of Texas, Irwin is right. In Iowa, where there's also a large Czech community, kolaches can be found in grocery stores, but they're most definitely filled with fruit, not meat. There are other differences. Iowa's kolaches have a rounder shape, and the fruit filling covering a larger area than their square-shaped Texas counterparts. As small communities continue to use food to spread culture, big companies like the Kolache Factory, which is headquartered in Texas, have started to build franchises in other states. At the same time, kolache recipes have continued to be passed down through generations. Some Texans of Czech descent, like Chris Svetlik, have started smaller shops like the Republic Kolache in Washington, D.C., after realizing how many people miss the familiarity of this comfort food. They grew up there, they spent some time there, they did military service there. You'd see a lot of folks that would literally wear their Texan pride. They put it on their hat or their shirt, or where they went to school, or a local Texas chain, he says. A lot of our customers met one another in line and had good conversations. That's been really cool to see, not just seeing our regulars, but having them get to know one another. Republic Kolaches started serving pastries, both sweet and savory, to people in the D.C. area in August of 2015. Svetlik and his partner Brian Stanford were greeted with more demand than they could meet as hundreds lined up for a taste of home. And as the company expanded and partnered with coffee shops and grocers like Whole Foods, it wasn't just Texans who were lining up. As the presence and popularity of kolaches continues to expand, Svetlik says, it doesn't matter if someone's heard the food or tasted it before. Even if the name is kind of funny, maybe folks have never heard of it. It's the time-honored tradition of dough with stuff in it, which is quite familiar. It's not too hard to understand or get on board with, Svetlik says. The main ingredients for a traditional kolache are soft, yeasted dough on the outside and a sweet filling, typically made from fruit or cheese on the inside. The yeasted dough is made from an all-purpose flour, butter, warm milk, and yeast. The filling is usually made from a softened fruit or soft cream cheese, which is mixed with cinnamon, sugar, and other spices. After the dough is kneaded and risen, it is rolled out into a thin sheet, filled with a sweet filling and twisted shut. Kolaches are then baked until lightly golden before serving warm and fresh. Along Interstate 35, the Czech Shop and Little Czech Bakery is a combination deli, bakery, and convenience store located in the city of West Texas. This tiny community of around 3,000 boasts a remarkably vibrant and long-standing Czech heritage. In 1859, a popular Czech reverend emigrated to Galveston to minister to German Protestants, and many of his compatriots followed. Established in 1983 by Bill Tolk, a former Marine, the store serves a traditional Czech cuisine such as kolache, kolbasniki, and strudels. The city is notable for its Czech heritage and was designated as the home of the official kolache of the Texas legislature. The store serves around 600 people a day, and it's a popular shop for travelers along Interstate 35. According to a poster in the store, the Czech stop, spelled CZECH, uses over 1,200 pounds of cream cheese, 9,000 pounds of flour, 750 gallons of milk, 2,400 pounds of butter, 1,300 pounds of sausage, 2,100 dozen eggs, and 2,500 pounds of American cheese each week to produce its baked goods. The city of West Texas hosts Westfest every Labor Day, which includes a kolache baking contest and a Twarovsky tournament. Crosby, northeast of Houston, hosts a Czech Fest and a kolache bake. Although modern technology has made baking kolaches a breeze, thank you KitchenAid mixers and industrial-sized machinery, one of the more integral facets to the kolache in Texas was the immense amounts of physical labor required. This aspect made kolaches a social and communal treat. During special occasions and large gatherings in the Czech community, such as church events or holidays, kolache bakers, especially the women of the household, would congregate in the kitchen, dedicating long hours to pounding, kneading, and baking dozens of kolaches to fill their guests' gullets. Recently, however, a new school of pastry chefs hailing from Texas have begun to reclaim the original Czech belt kolache and bring it to a wider audience. Although these chefs are venturing off into artisanal territory by toying with nouveau flavors geared towards the millennial palate. Candied jalapeno brisket kolache, anyone? All parties involved are dedicated to maintaining a connection between their creations and the ancestral versions. People in Brooklyn want something very artisanal, like always. Autumn Stanford of the Brooklyn Kolache Company told Smithsonian Magazine in 2013. If there's an American cheese in your sausage cheese jalapeno kolache, they're like, ugh. But I'm not going to change something that someone's been craving because it's not socially cool right now. According to Svetlik, the kolaches at Republic Kolache are somewhat thoughtfully and consciously moving outside their tradition. Although he soon plans to put classic Czech flavors like poppy seed and sweetened cabbage on the menu to provide customers a historical point of reference. If we were being totally dedicated to traditional kolaches, we would be limited to basically flavors that are the least not terribly glamorous and are possibly not great to eat. So this holiday, if you get into a cookie baking frenzy, why not put the kolaches on the menu? Oh, and one last word. Kolache are best consumed a few minutes after they come out of the oven, or at least on the same day they're made. If you have to keep them longer, store them at room temperature wrapped in foil, pop them in the oven for a couple minutes before eating. Thank you for listening to this serving of Seasons Eatings. Seasons Eatings is available wherever you download your favorite podcasts. And please, if you can leave a review about the show so we can spread the Christmas cheer. And if you let me know you've left a review, I'll send you a Seasons Eating sticker as a personal thank you. Also, I would love to hear from you. Send me an email at seasonseatingspodcast@gmail.com. Let me know how you like the show, suggestions for future episodes, or just to say hi. And I know we all get busy, so even sharing the podcast with someone you know who loves Christmas would be a big help. And if you're feeling extra generous this holiday season, you can buy me an eggnog. Head on over to seasonseatingspodcast.com and click on the little cup in the corner. Each small donation helps with the daily running of the podcast and is greatly appreciated. Seasons Eatings also has great items for you or your loved ones for the holiday season. So head on over to seasonseatings.com, click on the merchandise tab, and find your next great gift. I'm your host, Glenn Warren. Thank you for listening, and tune in again for another serving of Seasons Eatings. Seasons Eatings is also part of the Christmas Podcast Network. Whatever interest you have with the holidays, there's probably a podcast out there covering that topic. You can find Seasons Eatings with all the other podcasts at christmaspodcasts.com. Drop on by to find your next podcast addiction. All music for Seasons Eatings is used under the Creative Commons license.